and welcome again to American Love, Cooking Up Common Good. This is a Monday night cooking show, and we are going through 10 swing states. We have been going now for 7 weeks through swing states and visiting people, stories, trying the dishes, and reminding ourselves that America is beautiful and loving and strong, and we want to taste that. So I'm very excited that this week we have state of Michigan. I lived in Michigan for a while when I came as an immigrant, so I know something about it. But those of us who have been organizing this have particular link with Michigan as well. And today we will have 3 dishes and guests and music and photography, and you're going to love this. So the dishes that we will make, we will look at the German tradition and look at the dumplings and sauerkraut. I love fermented things, and they need to be part of our diet every week, perhaps every day. And we will have a cherry pie. I mean, Michigan is the producer of cherries for the country. And then we'll have a Detroit pizza, but it will be smoked. So that's different. And Mark Sandling will bring that to us, and cherry pie will come from a woman that is like a cherry, Ali Malafronte. And then we will have a Bridget do a doo-wop song for Michigan called Michigan Girl. And then we'll have a Christy Burkhoff with us, and I'm so glad that she's with us, and I will introduce her a little bit later. But right now we need to get cooking here. And we'll start with this dumplings and sauerkraut. When I started this series, American Love, I was thinking of people who had helped me as in my immigrant experience over the many years to be loved, to be cared for, and taught, and held by the hand, and comforted. And one of these people that has done that for me splendidly and over a long period of time is Rod Colburn, friend of mine. His family is mostly from Michigan. And so we got in touch around the specific recipe, and then he connected me with his dad, Larry, who then provided me a recipe that goes back to his grandfather, and that is a sauerkraut and the dumplings. And so that's Rod's grandfather worked in a coal mines, under the crust of the earth. And what would bring smile to him when you would say Kraut and dumplings? Everybody remembers that in the family. And so he would be happy, he would be relaxed, he would smile when he would have that on the menu. And he lived to 102 years. So his daughter, which is Rod's grandmother, lived 102 years, right? Larry will probably live 102 years, it looks to me. And then Rod, he will keep the streak. So I think my theory is that the secret of this is sauerkraut and the dumplings. So now we have elixir of life here that comes from the cold climate and those people who are in touch with the earth. So we will start. We need to have certain sequences in order to accomplish this in this time in between the contributions we have on the video. So we will quickly start with the dumplings. The recipes I got from Colburn family are so simple that I was confused. But that's what's beautiful about it. So I got it complicated, and that's probably why I'm not going to live 102 years. But here's the bread. You always have some old bread, and you can cut it like this. Sourdough, any bread would do, just to kind of dry it for a day on the outside. And then you take a cup of cold milk, some milk, hot milk, and you just pour it over like this. We've done this before in one of our recipes, and just kind of toss it, and needs to stay in it for a couple of minutes, like that, all right? So we'll put that on the side for now. That's bread and hot milk. Then we have sauerkraut. Sauerkraut, for those of you who just eat it with the hot dogs, you are missing a lot. This is kombucha, exponential. And so what we're going to do with this, you always buy sauerkraut, you read it doesn't have any vinegar. So it has its own brine. It has gazillions of bacteria here in our body we have more bacteria than we have our cells times 10. So we really need this actually. So we will just pour it out, and sauerkraut usually have a lot of salt and acid in order to be preserved. So we'll just drain it like this. We'll drain it. Okay, smells defragmenting your soul. So we will drain it like this, and just to show you the way you can preserve this, if you buy a good sauerkraut, organic and without vinegar added, then you take this brine, you pour it into a cup like this, and then you sip it. So good. About a quarter cup a day, and just keep it in the fridge, and your stomach will love you for it. So because this is so acidic and salty, we will just put it in the water for a couple of minutes to release that sharp and salty flavor, so that we can add our own things in it. Okay, so that's sauerkraut. We will have it for a couple of minutes. And so right now our bread is done and soaked, and this milk is coming in, and it's very, very, you can imagine this bread, how wonderful it is and comforting with this milk. So it's getting soft. See how it's like foaming when you press it? That's great. So now into this we're going to add 3 eggs like that. These are some sauteed onions. We'll just put them in. And we'll put some parsley and some of nutmeg here. That's what Germans love, nutmeg in this. In almost every recipe they have it. And I will mix this and make it into dumplings, right? One of the tricks is, if you want to cook this in the water, boil it in the water, you got to press them hard and cook them in a water that doesn't boil. But we're going to steam it. Because we're going to steam it, it needs to hold together. So we will just put 1 tablespoon of flour in this. Just very little, just to keep it together. Okay, so I'm going to make the dumplings while you are watching Christy. Christy is a person who grew up in Michigan with her family. They were pulling the food from farms, and I love her stories. Her hands always in the dirt and her feet always on the ground, and she's like a salt of the earth, but also such a sensitive and sensible soul, an artist. She's a contemplative photographer, and she teaches people how to take photography for their own contemplation, right? And she's an author and a public activist for civic discourse. And so when we were doing Michigan, I immediately contacted her and I said, Christy, I know you always have these love stories about Michigan. Tell me, please, can you prepare some things on the topic, the ways I love Michigan? You know, when you have a lover, and then tell me the ways you love me. Here is how she experiences the land and the state and the people.
Hello friends, my name is Christy Berghoff. I'm a contemplative photographer and an author, and I come to you today from the great mighty Mitten State, Michigan, one of the great microbrewing capitals of the world. Michigan, the home of the Detroit Tigers and the Lions and the Red Wings. Michigan, the birthplace of Motown music. I was raised barefoot on a small 40-acre flower farm in West Michigan. My hands partook in communion with the earth in all the weather and through all the seasons. We planted our seeds, grew our food, harvested it, hunted it, preserved it, shared it, and cherished it. Michigan, surrounded by the 5 Great Lakes, some of the world's largest bodies of fresh water. Our rolling hills are laced with orchards and vineyards. We stroll through old-growth forests and mighty sand dunes and sandy beaches with fresh, cool turquoise water. The waters of the Great Lakes is moody, sometimes subdued, still, like glassy skin pulled taut across the surface, and sometimes it's angry, slapping and slamming itself in gurgled, choking churns upon the shores, snatching at the sand and the lakeside forests, grabbing what it wills and dragging it into the deep. During winter, these lakes seem otherworldly, an astounding and desolate landscape of wave after wave of cool blue ice caves across a frozen surface. Some of our beaches are white sand, while others have a habit of coughing up colorful stones standed smooth and round from 100,000 years of being pushed, pulled, rolled, and tumbled across the sandy lake bottoms. Here in Michigan, we witness the fullness of all 4 seasons, and we feel ourselves adapt to all their conditions. The deep chill of winter when the world seems asleep under a white woolen blanket. We catch the giant falling snowflakes on our tongue. We run, roll, and slide down heaps of it to the backdrop of hollyberries and evergreens. We move ourselves into the wet greening of spring as buds begin to push themselves through the hard crust of winter, with blossoms bursting and birds harmonizing. The earth begins to wake, and with it, we too come to wakefulness. We heft ourselves from the winter blues, from the depressed moods that we only got through knowing that spring always comes. And then the summer sun throws its arms wide open to us. The beaches and campgrounds and nature trails and city parks and the hundreds of resort towns that circle our state all come alive with Michiganders and out-of-towners looking for respite and relaxation and refreshment. And too soon, the blue sky begins to take on that toasty walnut hue, and a slight chill comes to our lungs, and we know autumn is coming. The trees go yellow, and then orange, then brilliant fiery red, before falling to the forest floor, where they eventually turn brown and crisp and mulch the earth before the snow begins to fall again. Regardless of where one is in Michigan, we experience these seasons together. We are in this together. The people of Michigan are adaptable and resilient, enduring the seasons, being shaped and weathered and strengthened by the storms. Together we fall into patterns of living. Farmers plow up the fields with their blood, their sweat, pouring their lives into making green things rise up from the ground for the good of their communities. Factory workers put in long days of hard work with their hands churning out automobile parts and office furniture and 100 other things the world depends on Michiganders for. Undocumented immigrants put their hands to the Michigan earth, plucking the fruits and vegetables that sit atop our tables. Doctors and teachers and janitors and social workers and store clerks and stay-at-home moms and single parents and so many Michiganders serve us in all the ways they've been trained to do. These are the people of Michigan, hardy and hardworking, gracious and grateful, loving and principled, kind and enduring, clinging to traditions while embracing new advances. Michiganders are salt of the earth people. We are outdoorsy and urban. We appreciate the ability to slow down to a pace of sacred simplicity when our work is done. We congregate in the holy sanctuaries of front porches, sandy beaches, wooded trails, local breweries, community centers, sitting at the end of docks with our toes swirling in the water, and in lawn chairs around backyard fire pits, where each generation shares their stories with the next. I've lived in a few places throughout my life, but Michigan is my home, and I somehow always find myself returning home. Home to the grounded goodness of Michigan.
Thank you, Christy, so much. This is hard to pull off. I mean, when I hear you, I feel like I want to live in Michigan. Because I sort of escaped going to college there, but the graciousness and gratefulness that you talk about of Michiganders, although there's really bad roads there, as you taught me, but there is great and sturdy hearts there. And I love when you talk about grounded goodness that people have. It helps me understand United States, helps me understand America's this grounded goodness and simplicity of it. So thank you. Now we go back to where we were, and we have a super technology here and take a camera. Actually, right now we only have one person on the camera because my other daughter is constantly marching, right? So she is in a city hall, occupying the city hall because the vote is being made about a budget for the police soon, and she is part of sleeping there and being there and doing her part. And so instead of her, we have these signs that she uses, and we have a bunch of signs here that we use and pick when we need to go. She and her boyfriend, they go around and they bring food and supplies to the protesters and people who need it. So, Letta, if you're watching, we love ya. So let's go to the sauerkraut here, right? So it's cooking here nicely. You see it's a little sizzling. So this is just plain sauerkraut. We'll add water like that to produce steam and heat. In this sauerkraut, you can improvise. Same way we did with the dumplings. Here, what I have, I'll show you on this camera, is garlic, black peppercorn, and the ground mustard seeds. This is a mustard that is in this shape. So I like to put those because the peppercorn will fall on the bottom, garlic will dissolve in it, and mustard will even more emphasize the fermentation. So I'll just put it like that, put it here, mix it. And then we'll soak this in more water because you will see what's going to happen now. Okay, even more. Great. So this is sauerkraut, and what we will do with these dumplings is put them in one pot on top of the sauerkraut. So it'll be soaking the steam and the water from the sauerkraut. So here are the dumplings that we made. They're pretty big, like a small tennis balls. And we will just put them around like this. and not let it boil at the beginning because they need to set. Otherwise they will fall apart if they boil straight away. So make a little space here. Okay, that's it. Here we go, and we just cover it and we let it put it on low until they set, and then we'll raise the temperature. So that's it. It was pretty quick, right? Pretty quick. And a whole family is happy with this. Even kids like this. So we call this episode Grace Under Pressure. And this grace under pressure is a saying from Ernest Hemingway. And Ernest Hemingway was Michigander. So a lot of the things that he learned and absorbed was from people in Michigan and from the stories and values in Michigan. Ernest Hemingway is known for simple sentences, for taking everything away from the language that takes away people's imagination, so that you are very simple, and that creates a lot of space for everybody. And so he was famous for that. He would say that life is sometimes chaotic, often stressful, and always painful. And that we are all vulnerable. He was a person who would talk about the vulnerability, that if you love the truth, or love beauty, or faith, and hope, and love, it is for sure that you will be heartbroken. There's no way to believe in something, love something, without experiencing a heartbreak sooner or later. But it's worth it. And he says that courage is grace under pressure. I love this grace under pressure because that's where we are as a country right now. Are we going to stay gracious? Are we going to stay loving? Are we going to respect one another? Are we going to have a dignity of human love and care for each other when everything is under such a pressure to give up on that? And so that's why we are here today celebrating Ernest Hemingway and Michigan and the grace that is in Michigan and that is under pressure today. So in Michigan, there is Detroit. Detroit is a very important city for the United States and for the whole world. And they make great pizza, and it's a Detroit-style pizza, which is kind of thick. So my friend Mark, who is a chef, I asked him, can you make a smoked Detroit pizza? And he, I knew him. He is like an addict. You give him an idea to cook something, and it will not let him go. And it didn't let him go. He did what I thought couldn't be done, but he did it. So here's Mark taking on this challenge. You can see how happy he is to do it.
Hey folks, welcome to my kitchen again. So this week we're in Michigan. Great food, wonderful people, and a chance for me to try something I've not done before. I actually would have never thought of this, but now that I've heard about it, it sounds pretty good. It turns out that one of the favorite dishes in Michigan is a smoked pizza. And so I decided to do my own version of it. I kind of looked up a list of the best pizzas and looked at what the topping of the number one is, and so I'm doing a take on that. But that one was made in a round style, but I'm going to make this more in the traditional Detroit style. They used to use the square or rectangle metal steel tins from the auto shops and from the assembly shops where they would use parts bins and tool bins and stuff like that, and that's what they cook it in. I'm just going to use a regular baking pan for it, but let's take a look at the ingredients and talk a little bit about how this is going to come together. So here are my ingredients. Over here I've got red onions, some mixture of mushrooms. There are oyster mushrooms, there are portobello, there's a couple of others in there as well, but it's just a mixture to give us some variety and taste and flavor. This is where I'm cheating a little bit. Over here you can see my pan that I'll be using. It's just a regular baking pan. Because pizza doesn't take that long to cook, as a smoker, it's usually about time getting that flavor in there. So I went ahead and did some smoked Gouda, which I'm going to mix with mozzarella to put on the pizza. We're going to throw some prosciutto on there. I actually tried to find some smoked prosciutto locally, but right now it's a little bit hard to find. So we'll be going with that. And the sauce that we're going to use is a combination of 2 sun-dried tomato sauces. One's a straight up regular spread, sun-dried spread, and one is a sun-dried tomato with pesto in it. So let me go get the dough, and we'll start putting this together. So what we're going to do, we're going to start just by putting just a little bit of olive oil in the bottom of the pan. It'll help some with the sticking. Some people use parchment paper here. It's not a bad idea. Sorry for bumping the camera. We're going to get that in there. Got my pizza dough ready. And I'm using a pre-bought from a local pizza place. You can certainly make it yourself. It's not too difficult to do. You can find recipes online, and if you've got a decent mixer, it works pretty fast. So obviously in this one we want to go square. So get it roughly square in the pan. And then all you do is you start picking the corners up and stretching it out. Get it out there a little bit. Pat it down some. We're going to keep doing this until we get it the right shape, and then we'll come back and put our toppings on. All right, so you can see we have this mostly filling the pan. I'm going to go in and put a few fingerprints in there, just some little pockets that some olive oil can rest in. We'll give the pizza dough a little more texture in those spots. All right, jump straight to our sauces. Like I said, I'm going to do a combination. So I'm going to put tomato and a little of this pesto sun-dried tomato. Let's get that spread out pretty much to the edges. I might have to add some more, obviously. One of the things about the Detroit style in these square or rectangle pans is that the idea is you don't make a crust around the edge. You actually go right out to the edge with the sauce and with the cheese. And what happens is that cheese makes this wonderful edge around it that's just, you know, cheesy, but also just baked and crunchy. It's quite delicious. So all the way out to the edges. You don't have to make this perfect because as it heats up, it'll spread out. Oops, and I keep hitting the camera there. All right. Next, I'm going to throw on our prosciutto. I got this right from the store, pre-packaged. Pull off some pieces. I don't want to lay them too flat. I actually want them to curl up a little bit. So add texture when they cook. It also causes them to cook at different rates. So you'll get little crunchy pieces. You'll get pieces that are a little bit softer. But you can see some of that lovely fat there that will add to spreading the flavor around and sharing that between all the pieces we put on here. A few more pieces of the prosciutto and we will be ready. As a matter of fact, I just need a little piece right over there at this top. I don't want to miss, so that everybody gets a good chance at it, you know. Go there. Then we're going with our onions. Red onions, cut really fine. Then my mixture of mushrooms. Make sure I get enough of that. It's looking reasonably good. A little bit of our smoked Gouda. Actually, not a little bit. Want a good amount of the smoked Gouda. Right there. Come back with the mozzarella. Once again, right up to the edges. I'm using some thick cut mozzarella to make sure I get those edges. All right. It's ready to go in the smoker. I'll meet you guys out there. Okay, so we're out here at the smoker. I've got this set higher than we would normally cook most of our meats, because to get the smoke in, like I said, we want to slow cook it. But in order to get that crust where we want it, we need a nice high temperature. So this is set at 450. I'll open it and you'll be able to see, well, sort of, you can see the smoke that's coming off there. So we're good in a good place. So this is our final product. Well, in terms of getting it together before we put it in, we're going to stick this right in the center. A lot of heat building up in there, so it's going to cook the top, some bubbly cheese, get the crust nice and crispy. About 7 minutes or so. I'll check it just to be sure, and then we'll try some of the finished product. Okay, folks, it's been 7 minutes. I checked it out. It's looking great. It smells amazing. Here's our finished product, well, almost finished product. You can see the crust is bubbled up. It's getting crispy around the edges. That cheese has melted so beautifully. Onions are like perfectly cooked. I'm gonna get this inside, let it cool down, and then we'll work on cutting it and topping it off. See you in a few minutes. All right, we've got the pizza inside. It's cooled down just enough that I'll be able to cut it, and then we can dress it with a little salad that we're kind of putting on top, and then we're going to try it out, see how it is. One of the things I will point out to you as we're doing this, you can see it's in a square pan like we talked about, which also means, sorry about all the movement, there we go. Traditional way, obviously you're not going to cut it into triangles. The traditional way has always been squares. So we're going to cut some squares into this, relatively equal. All right, about there. Okay, we got that reasonably well done. I'm going to start dressing this. First, I've got some micro young greens, really. These are sweet pea greens. We're going to scatter those around just a bit, enough that there'll be some on each piece. Just a little bit of fresh smoked Gouda. That'll work. Then fresh prosciutto, not quite cooked yet. Well, it's been cured, so good enough. But that'll give that contrast between it and the prosciutto that's already been done. And then finally, we're just going to finish it off with a little bit, just a dressing of extra virgin olive oil. Just a little bit on each piece, just like that. Let's see if I did a decent job of cutting. Those edges are hard to get to with the pizza cutter. But let's, oh, there you go. Now you get to see me really well. Let's get that last piece out, and maybe I won't bump the camera yet again. Oh, that crust. You know what? I'm gonna have to grab a knife to finish cutting this. The crust is about perfect. I can tell that it's nice and light on the top and really, really crunchy and crispy on the bottom. All right, there we go. Got a piece out. Got a little greens on it. I'll add a little piece of prosciutto to it. And now we get to the best part. Let's give this a try. Oh, look, this is just what I was talking about. This nice little crispiness from the cheese on the edge. And it's nice and fluffy. Let's give this a shot. You do get the smokiness, but honestly, combination of those two sun-dried tomatoes and sauces, and smokiness from the Gouda, nice earthy taste from the mushrooms, and then that bright topping of the greens with a little extra virgin olive oil. Maybe my new favorite pizza. It's delicious. So I hope that you've enjoyed. And I hope you'll try it at home because it is so good. Good seeing y'all.
Don't you want to be with Mark? I mean, it is just so, forget the dumplings, forget the Kraut. I want that piece of pizza with Mark there and listening him chomping on it and talking about it. It's just to see him is a whole person experience. So thank you, Mark, for this piece of art that you gift us every time. So one of the people who also authors in that's known to all of us is Arthur Miller. He's also a Michigandian, and he went to University of Michigan. And he was the person who wrote about American working class, about how they think, how they feel. He was really elucidating those kind of things. And I find that really informing and interesting. And here's a couple of his quotes that are inspiring us today at this time where we find ourselves. So one of them is, don't be seduced into thinking that which does not make a profit is without value. Don't be seduced into thinking that which does not make a profit is without value. How many things between us, among us, from us are valuable that are not counted as GDP, something that we cannot put price on, like motherhood or sitting in a park together, things that we just take for granted. And he also said, there are certain men in the world who rather see everybody hung before they'll take blame. There are certain men in the world who rather see everybody hung before they'll take a blame. I'm not going to comment on this one. So how timely that is. And then he will also say, one can forever stand on the shore. At some point, even if filled with indecision, skepticism, reservation, and doubt, you either jump in or concede that life is forever elsewhere. You either jump in or you're conceding that life is somewhere else in some other time. And I feel that's happening with my daughters, how much they're jumping in, and how many people today are going off the fences, abandoning, all kinds of ways we have spent our time and doing something that matters and taking a risk. And then this one of the most beautiful quotes you can find is, everything we are is at every moment alive in us. Everything we are is at every moment alive in us. That's a definition of intuition, of being present, fully present in the here and now. All of our past, all of our faculties are present in every moment. And with that, I would like to invite you to brace yourself for some beautiful music that will move you and that uses this quote that I just read about everything being always in you. And Bridget will sing to us a song that's called Michigan Girl, in which everything is experienced at once.
Peace and love, beautiful people. Bridget Barkin here with another song for you this week, inspired by Michigan. Now, Michigan is actually an Algonquin word for the big lake. There are a lot of native tribes in the Michigan area. One of them is called the Potawatomi. And one of their words that I recently learned for thank you is iguian. So I hope that everybody takes this word as an incentive to be thankful for something in their life and thankful for the people around them, and especially thankful for the people of this land. Iguian. Here's Michigan Girl.
Do 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 do, my baby is sweet like cherries. My baby is wild like rice. My baby's heart is big like the big lake, and I wanna swim in her lovely embrace. My baby's got drive like a motor. My baby sings like the singing sands. My baby is grand like the rapids, and I wanna sail with her love to the land. Oh, she's my grace under pressure. She's my lady to treasure, my Midwest beauty, my Motor City cutie. Yeah, she's my Michigan girl. My baby's got soul like music. My baby is loyal like a book. My baby is alive in every moment, and I'll cross the bridge just to kiss her again. My baby is a fire keeper. My baby is flowing sweet water. My baby is an apple blossom, and she blooms for the good of the common. Oh, she's my grace under pressure. Yeah, she is my lady to treasure, my Midwest beauty, my Motor City cutie. She's my Michigan girl. Ooh, yeah. My Michigan girl. Ooh, from Detroit to Ann Arbor, all the way to Kalamazoo, yeah. She's my Michigan girl.
All right, my baby. Thank you. Well, let's check on the Kraut and the dumplings here. This is how it looks like. It's doing great. They're holding together. They're completely two different things. I forgot to add the smoked salt. This is from San Francisco Salt Company, and I added it. So that's part of the recipe. And it needs to go a little longer to heat these dumplings all the way inside, so it's all done. So we'll keep it going here. What would be Michigan without cherries? Cherries are the most wonderful fruit. I love cherries. Where I grew up, I was climbing on the trees when I was growing up, and we were stealing cherries. And I remember we would go to a monastery, and the nuns will chase us every summer when we would steal cherries there. So when I come to United States, it was part of being at home. Ali Malafronte, one of our chefs, she's preparing cherry pie, and you will see. But this story is not about cherries.
Hi everyone, this is Allie from Atlanta, Georgia, and we are cooking up Common Good. It's Sunday afternoon, and this is being filmed for tomorrow evening's Swing State, Michigan. And I am going to be doing cherry pie. Nothing like fruit from Michigan. So, a couple things I learned. Pitting cherries. You can get a cherry pitter, but I don't have one. And you can actually treat it like garlic and it's gonna make a mess. Squeeze it like a garlic, break it in half, and out comes the pit and the stem. I've already done 4 cups of cherries, a tablespoon of lemon juice, and you wanna do a cup of sugar. These are sweet cherries. I'm doing a little less sugar than the recipe calls for. Sour cherries, you wanna use the full amount. A little vanilla, You also can use almond extract. And of course you have to have the cornstarch, 1/3 cup. And you're just gonna mix this and you're gonna let it sit for about 10 minutes before you start cooking it. And then we will do the pie crust. My mom has always made our pie crust for every holiday. So it's one of those things I haven't learned as well because my mom always was the pie maker in the family. And then my daughter took over the pie making from her and has been doing it the last few years. So this just sits in its juices, lets it break down before we heat it up. So for the pie crust, very simple. The key to pie crust is all about what's chilled. So you do 2.5 cups of flour, a teaspoon of salt, and then just gonna mix that up. 6 tablespoons of butter, and it needs to be chilled. This just came out of the refrigerator. This recipe calls for the Crisco butter combination, which gives it a different way of making the crust flaky. This is going to be mixed up. I do not have a pie crust cutter, so I'm doing it the old-fashioned way with 2 table knives. And you're just going to mix this up and make it crumbly. And once I get this done, we will finish up the pie crust. Okay, once you have the pie crust crumbly with the cold Crisco and butter, you're going to use 1/2 cup of ice water, just a small amount at a time. It has to be ice cold. Just do a little bit and mix it up. May not use all of it, just till it starts sticking together. I am going to split it in half, form it into 2 balls for the pie crust, and put it in the refrigerator for at least 1 hour. You want it chilled before you roll it. So we will come back to the...
Sorry.
That's a disaster.
Keep going. They can cut it out. Keep going. No, just repeat that. No, here, let me.
Okay, everyone. Allie's back with the cherry pie. I skipped several steps because I had to take a little break this evening to celebrate my engagement. So, cherry pie. Finished up the crust, and it, I wasn't crazy about the butter Crisco combo. I'll probably just do Crisco next time, but I rolled it out, and the cherries that I put together, I added a tablespoon of butter, and here it is. It's ready to go in the oven. So, cherry pie from representing Michigan. Okay, everyone, cherry pie was in the oven for 40 minutes, 375. I covered it with foil, took it off for about 20 minutes, and then took it off the last 5. We'll let it sit and cool down.
Congratulations, Rod and Ali. That was a great story. And can't wait to try some of that cherry pie. I will never get that kind of a smile. The cameraman was Rod, so for those of you who don't know, and that's why Ali was quite distracted there. So beautiful. So sometimes we finish these shows with a sort of a bang or finishing, like on a high note. What we want to do today is finish with a contemplation and with being centered and being present and learning how to be in the kitchen and learning a little bit about our bodies. So indulge yourself to pay attention to this. Master yoga teacher Shelley Paget has gone with us through 3 elements, and the last element left is water. So Shelley, when you speak, we listen and we do things that you tell us, and you bless us that way. Thank you.
Good evening. I hope you all are well at Vote Common Good, and especially in the great state of Michigan. Michigan is amazing that it's this pick this week, as I am on the last element of the body, which is water. And I love Lake Michigan. I'm sure you do too, and that's probably partly why you live there. So today, as we talk about the element of water for a few moments, I just want to talk about food first, and then we'll talk about how the element of water is present in our bodies. So if you think about something quintessential as watermelon, very heavy, primarily wet and full of water, and also good vitamins like vitamin C. And if you think about food, other foods that we eat that contain water, it's really a critical part of our diet, and especially in summertime, when we have lots and lots, an abundance of fruits and vegetables available to us. Things like romaine. If I were to cut into this, or here I might just break it, just hear that crunch, that delicious crunch of romaine, full of water and really good for you. Another way to get water into the body is water is one of the most healing, cleansing things that we can take into the body. Also things like cucumbers, celery. Think about those crunchy, light foods that you cook with or that you eat raw. So water is present in our food, and water is very present in our bodies. I think, I can't remember exactly, maybe one of you knows, that the water is between 75 and 85 or 90% water. It's a huge percentage of water. And in that, we think about the flow of energy in the body. Think about a river flowing, and that along the way there are bumps in the road, but it has power to run from a little trickling stream all the way into something like the Mississippi, flowing into the Gulf of Mexico, flowing into larger bodies and oceans in the world. So water is very powerful, and how the element of water is felt in our bodies is heavy. So dense and heavy. Fluid might also be another form of water, in that we might be able to think fluidly. But water oftentimes is felt as heavy in the body. If we're feeling overly heavy, we might feel depressed or lethargic, lacking motivation. And we can balance that energy out in the body. So let's say you're feeling depressed. There's a lot happening in the world right now. It feels quite overwhelming. Literally, you might feel like you're underwater. One thing that you could do in that instance is take a body posture such as this. So if you inhale, push through the feet, lift your arms, and then from there, it just automatically makes me want to smile. You can even lift your heels off the floor and take a posture called tiptoe. And in this posture, your eyes would be steady, and you would find steadiness in your breath. Breathing in, breathing out, and let your eyes be steady on one unmoving point. If you're willing, take one more breath here. Really reach the fingertips up and lift your heels. This posture brings a sense of lightness into the body. And as you exhale, slowly lower the arms, maybe out to the sides or maybe forward, and lower the heels down at the same rate. And if you're wobbly in that pose, maybe you need to work on some groundedness. Maybe you have a lot of air, a lot of anxiety. Water element can play a role in that too. So if you're heavy, something like a tiptoe pose, smiling, broadening the chest, kind of a lift in the body. And if you're feeling anxious in the body, we want to use the water element in another way. And that would be through something like a forward fold, and I can't wait to show you this. I have flowy pants on purpose because of the water element, and I just realized I'm not going to be able to have you see my hamstrings here. But I want to show you a forward fold. A forward fold gives us the sense of calming the mind and steadying the body. So if you put your hands on your tops of your hip points, you want your feet to be about hip width here. And maybe you have the idea that if you do a forward fold to stretch out your hamstrings, that's what it's all about. So your legs need to be straight and your knees need to be locked. Please let go of that idea right now. A forward fold is primarily about your low back. So if you have your hands on your hips and bend your knees, so you have some stability in the legs, pressing your chest forward, this might be a good forward fold for you when you look down rather than jutting the chin forward. So looking down, and then from here you bring your hands to your thighs, spread your toes out, let the hands slide down the legs. Notice I'll bend my knees a little bit more. I want my ribs to come toward my thighs, and at the bottom I'm going to tuck my chin, let my head hang long so that the back of the neck gets the benefit of this beautiful traction in the body. From here, if you press through the feet, you might sway the torso side to side, but feel the legs as the trunk or the roots here. And I like to think of a weeping willow, just hanging the torso over the legs. We'll take a breath in. And as you exhale, sigh out your mouth. Bring hands to the legs to come up. Bend your knees again, firm foundation in the legs. Slide the hands up the fronts of the legs, protecting the back. When you come up, you'll stand. You shrug your shoulders. And notice how that felt in your body. Close your eyes maybe. And then I'm going to tell you one more thing about the water element and trying to reduce that sense of anxiety in the mind. And that would be to take a longer exhale than an inhale. So if you're on your way to a meeting or you're having a confrontation with your partner or your kids are just making you crazy because you're locked inside during COVID, if you take a deep inhale through your nose and purse your lips like you're blowing through a straw, that automatically lengthens your exhale. It brings us from the fight, flight, freeze mode, sympathetic nervous system, to the calming, cooling, quieting, digesting mode, parasympathetic nervous system. So as you sit down or continue watching your American Love or you prepare this food, take a couple of those breaths before you eat, inhaling through your nose, belly gets big, preparing for digestion, and as you exhale, purse your lips. And maybe a forward fold with your knees bent. You can gradually straighten them, but start with bent knees. Until we meet again, enjoy the Great Lakes around you and honor the water that flows within you. Peace.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you for nurturing us and nourishing us and helping us survive and thrive as we fight this battle. So it's time to try this Colburn recipe, and I want to thank again Colburn family for providing the idea and the recipe, and also congratulate Rod and Allie on the big news. And just for the record, I want to say that I edited that video and added music. That was not their intention. They sent me footage for the cherry pie. So, but there are more important things than cherries. So let's try this. I'm excited. Check this out. It's just done now, timed properly, and here's one of these dumplings, and then we just grab some of this sauerkraut with all these spices inside, like that. And here we are. It's very simple. We just put a little bit of sour cream on top, like that. It starts melting right away. Sour cream and sauerkraut are in Germany like, how do they call them here? Peas and carrots in the United States. Yeah, it goes together. So This is so soft and right, and you just press it like this. And see, when you open it, this has a flavor of bread and sweetness of onion and freshness of parsley and nutmeg. And that is in contrast with the sour and garlicky and mustardy and black peppery sauce that is around. So this comforts you and this refreshes you. And the sour cream ties it all together. So let's see if we have achieved what we wanted. Oh, just right. When this quarantine and COVID is over, don't be a stranger when you come in New York. We can eat together right in this home. Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful evening. And I want to invite you one more time to think about grace under pressure. Keep having faith, keep hoping, keep loving. The pressure is increasing to give up on it. But the more the pressure, the more committed we are, the more we breathe, the more we stand on our feet, the more we are in the present moment. Keep loving and hoping and believing. We'll see you on Thursday. You can connect with us when we can have a conversation on Thursday. We will have either Christy Berghoff or her husband Brian Berghoff, who is running for Congress, and I think he will win in Michigan. So we will learn a lot of great information about what is really going on in Michigan minds and hearts, and you'll be able to understand and help out as we move towards November 3rd. If you want to learn about more programs, go to votecommongood.org and find out all kinds of things we are doing between now and November 3rd that will make you mad, that will make you happy, that will give you strength, and that will give you nourishment. See you on Thursday.